All right, tonight on the Long Range Only podcast, we got Eric Stecker and Bob Beck with us from Mcmillan and now Defiance. We're going to go over some things, the exciting stuff they got going on, as well as some questions you guys have been asking online. So, welcome, guys.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Yeah, thank you very much.
It's a cold day here in Montana, so I'm a little jealous of you Arizonans there.
Ah,
I don't know that we've cleared 0 degrees in 3 days. So, first thing, I think we saw some people talking about there's been a lot of changes, obviously, in the shooting world in general. Huge changes with you guys there. Let's just kind of hit it square in the face. The first thing everybody asks about is pricing. What can you guys tell us? What has changed in the last few years with your guys' pricing? Has it gotten better, got worse? What's going on?
Well, if I may, I think it's important to talk about this in 2 parts, because there's the pricing that took place when we took over at Mcmillan, and then there's the pricing that's taking place as we took over at Defiance. That's one part, and then the other part is just standard pricing. Now we'll start with the standard pricing first. Everybody knows stuff's going up, stuff's getting more expensive. So for prices to go up incrementally is normal under the circumstances. Nobody wants to have to raise prices, because the only reason you raise prices is because your costs are increasing. So that's just how that works. And so that's something that's just going to be consistent with every other situation. But I think the thing that people are more focused on is some of the dramatic price changes that occurred. Well, I've got 32 years of experience in this industry. And while I was at Berger, the company that owned Berger owned several companies. And so I had the advantage of going through financial reviews with all of those companies. And then when I was part of NAMO, we spent all the time looking at financials of all the other companies. And the fact is, successful companies, successful manufacturing companies run on a formula. You have to cover everything that you spend money on, and then you figure out how much you have to get in return for that product. And then you're left with what you need, what you use to grow and stay healthy. Well, it just happens to be true in my experience that in the companies that I've been dealing with, what was done to define costing is something I wouldn't be able to explain with normal manufacturing math. So when I went at it with the review that actually broke everything down, showed us where every penny was going, looked at all the little things, I think it's a common thing for people to do, to say, oh, that's only 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. Or, oh, that's only 2 cents, it can't matter. Well, I assure you, there's a lot more than those things, than the things you see in the stuff around you. So if you don't look for all of those, then you've got no chance of getting any close to what it actually costs, because inevitably you miss stuff.
Well, to that, if I interrupt you for a minute, to that point, I remember watching the documentary on Remington several years ago about the trigger issue. I imagine we've all seen it. And I think it was something like, it was either 3 or 6 cents that they could have done back then to fix that. And that was too expensive. So to your point, yeah, you got to add all that stuff up. When you think about a big company like that, it's like, well, was it 3 or 6 cents back in, the 50s? And then now it's this multi-billion-dollar lawsuit of trigger issues that could have been resolved so simply back then.
I'll jump in there off that a little bit. You take these companies, Mcmillan or Defiance, with the warranties that they have, right? Like Mcmillan, for the example, is pretty much unconditional. So we're trying to take it to the next step of your Remington example, where we're going to make it right with you no matter what. As a grand scale, over thousands and thousands of units, you have to cover that basis somewhere.
Snap-on tools aren't cheap either. Right. You pay for 3 of them when you buy the first one, right?
If you're going to commit to being premium, you have to make choices as to the kinds of materials you use, the kinds of systems you use, and those things cost more. And so it's just the nature of the business. And you either decide that you're going to be that, you realize that those things cost more, and you charge what they're worth in a fair market across the board the same, using exact same things. You don't have to worry about, well, we're going to sell you guys this version, this thing over here, because we make a lot on it, but we're going to discourage you from buying that one because it makes less. Nobody's got time for that.
Well, just in this industry, there's companies that, there's a lot of different companies with different philosophies, like you're talking about there. There's some with the phenomenal warranty and every single owner's had to use it. Okay. Then there's companies with I've literally had people come to ask me about this company, and we won't get into names or anything, but hey, how's their warranty? Hell, I don't know. I've never had to use it. You know, that's kind of the way I feel like Mcmillan falls into on that too is, yeah, imagine their warranty's good. Should have never needed it, you know? And so I think that's kind of what you're talking about was with your premium products, you have less of that issue.
Good shit.
It's so good. Mcmillan actually replaces stocks that are burned in fires. That's how few warranty issues we get. That if somebody tells us that their rifle was in a fire and it had a Mcmillan stock, we'll replace it. And we've done that since I've been there. I mean, 3 times, but it's one of those things that's how few of these issues we get that we're willing to support it to that extent.
Cool. Okay, so and just kind of recap then, I mean, is there any specific numbers, like somebody today goes and orders an A6 competition stock, do you know off what's the different price they're going to pay in 2023 than what they paid in 2018?
Well, no, I don't have those numbers specifically. I can say that back when we did the price adjustment in March, we what I'll say corrected things so that all things are basically the amount over cost so that we can operate as a business. So from that point, now that we've stabilized it, from that point, there is a 3% cost increase in 2023. We've let people know about it. I know it was several weeks ago, could have been a month or 2 ago. We told them that they can place orders in advance, that we would accept them at Mcmillan. And so the cost isn't actually going into effect until January 1. So that's what's happening at Mcmillan in 2023. I think more to the point is back when we made the major correction, the thing that changed quite a lot was some of the competition stocks that we were making, the price there, because the price for the competition stocks was incredibly low, where the hunting stocks and the tactical stocks were more similar. Well, if you look, just let's use logic. If you took a competition stock, a hunting stock, and a tactical stock and laid them out side by side, they're about as long as each other. They have about as much material as each other. I can assure you, and from a labor perspective, it's tens of dollars different. There's not that much difference. And the fact that we were able to sell a tactical stock for $1,000 and a hunting stock for $850 and a competition stock for $300, $500, not only did it make sense just from a logic perspective, it made no sense at all from a math perspective. And so that's one of the changes. So to answer your question sort of indirectly, the competition stocks were most greatly affected. That went up quite a bit. The hunting stocks, I don't think they went up much at all. Maybe it was 6%, something like that. And I believe that I know there were some tactical stocks that actually went down, because our objective, this isn't a money grab, this isn't an experiment. We take the costs that we know what we want to do on our growth plan. We have a very set structure. We know what our discounts are. We know who our customers are. We have a very set structure, and we apply that structure. And then the price is what the price is. We're not trying to screw anybody. So for us to be a healthy, thriving company that produces premium products for the firearm enthusiast, that's how much those stocks cost. And now that it's been corrected, what we will see going forward is incremental costs that stay in pace with inflation so that we can keep the doors open and keep everybody that works there fed.
Okay.
I'll dive in a little bit on the dirty if you guys want, because I know there was a little bit more said on some of these threads. I think something that might have bothered some folks was some of the discontinuations in conjunction with the pricing. And I will bear some of that burden. I think people expect me to. So, when you take a company like Mcmillan, who is thousands of units in back order, it's not tens, it's not hundreds, it's thousands. And that correlates to 6 months, 9 months, 12-month lead times. And you find out when you do these costing analysis, which Eric is an expert at, that you're spending, let's just say, for example, 20% of your floor time for something that's relative to 5% of your business. And so then that you have an overwhelming of negativity in the market because your lead times are so horrible because you're not using your time efficiently. So on top of Eric, helping our companies to get these costings in line, we had some tough decisions to make in regards to what we were going to continue forward with and what we were not going to continue forward with. Because when you're sitting in an office, especially when you purchase a company, right? So I'm the purchaser of Mcmillan. There's nobody on the hook but me. I have no investors. You're looking at it right here. And so when I'm on the hook to make good with the Mcmillan family that has carrying that load with Kelly's estate, you got to say, how are you going to put more smiles on faces than frowns on faces? And that was some of where we took a little bit of negativity, and we just hope that the reduced lead times for the larger group of people is going to pull through for us on that one.
They actually
And
kind
you
of,
have.
yeah, you have.
reduced
That's
lead time.
that actually brings me to the next thing I was going to bring up. And, I don't know about the inner workings of it and things, but personally, we'd had a stock on order, and shoot, I think it came to us in 4 months or less. And it shocked, like, to the point to where I'm calling. It's like, hey, did you have a stock on order? Because this can't be my stock ready yet. And, when we talk about that stuff, people just say, well, yeah, but that's because, you're long range only, and they hand select the crap you get, and you get to cut in line, things like that. And I mean, I work with the same people when I email and order a stock. Yeah, it's the same gal I've talked to for 3 years, but it's the same person you'd get if you emailed in or called in. So the meat and potatoes of it, again, has your lead time, due to Bob's point there, has your lead time changed?
Well, and I'll start with, numbers aren't normally sexy, but there's this particular number that I think is relevant. 1/3 of the number of stock products, the stocks that Mcmillan made, amounted to 7% of the total sales. Now, and what Bob was talking about is absolutely true. Those stocks, we'd have stocks that you'd have to spend 8 hours basically rebuilding the tang. And it's something we only did twice a year, but you can imagine the kind of resources you have to apply to those one-off situations that could rather be spent on a guy making 4 or 5 game hunters or 4 or 5 game warden 2.0s or whatever the case might be. So along those lines, to answer your question, the stocks that are your hunting stocks, that are your painted stocks, where the system has been dramatically improved by us moving resources away from the individual long-term projects to the consistent stuff that we can make regularly all the time, that's gone from 6 to 8 months down to 2 to 3 months in some cases and 4 to 5 months in others. Those have been doing very well. Now we are working on our molded in stocks. The molded in stocks are still a bit longer because the molded in is a tricky prospect because we hand lay the epoxy into the stocks. Now, I know there's been a few things said about Mcmillan and technology. There's cutting tables. We got a cutting table. There's CNC machines. We got CNC machines. We got all that stuff too. We got design programs. We can make files, the 3D files that people can use and all that kind of stuff. We do all that stuff too. The fact is, we're a 50-year-old company that was established with love and pride by someone who wanted to make the best stocks in the world that could be used by the military to fight against our enemies and bring boys home. That's the approach that he built us on. We've got no reason to change that until somebody shows me the math or somebody shows me the system that makes a better stock. We know about pre-preg, we know about ovens, we get all that. We're still making, in my opinion, the best stocks in the world, and we've got a guarantee to stand behind it. So for that reason, we make them the same way that Kelly made them, we make them the same way that Gail made them. And so those stocks, when you make them by hand, they don't come out of those molds absolutely perfect. We got to make sure that they get treated right and get fixed. Well, that process, that's a hand process, and that takes time and that takes attention. And so the molded in stocks, they take about the same time they've taken before, because to do that, it's hard work and it's meticulous work, and it's something that is very popular. It's 50% of our entire sales is going through the molded in side of things. And so we have dedicated systems on trying to improve upon that. And we've got some really smart people joining the team soon. And we've got some really great ideas that we've been working this. We've been implementing this. Trust me, we're not sitting back on our laurels. So we are going to fix that side of it as well. But the hunting stocks, the painted stocks, those stocks are coming out much faster, much better. And I know there's a few things, Mausers, Seikos, there's a few things we used to do that, there's a few that are upset about it, and I'm very apologize for that. But I assure you, for every one of those folks that's upset, there's 10 guys that are getting the Mcmillan stock that wouldn't have gotten it before. And that's why we did it.
I want to add one thing too, is, all those things that Eric just described, I don't think could be described any better when it comes to hand fit quality. But what he's not sharing with you is some of the things that we're doing to the exterior of the stocks. The interior is going to be exactly what he's saying, but we do have CNC technology that allows us to do entire clean beauty layers and all kinds of different arrangement of gel coats now. And these stocks are going to literally be released at this coming 23, which is in just a couple weeks, trade shows. So there's going to be some new releases from Mcmillan at trade shows. There's another new stock that Warden 2.0 just crushed it. Based on some of the feedback with you guys, we've got its bigger brother, which we know is going to kill it. So we've got that model. We've got these beauty layers. We've got new colors, entirely new, molded in process. And all I'll say, because Eric will kill me, is there might be some metal work in the very near future.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't listen to any of that.
Don't listen to him. No.
So only reason I bring it up is I am not immersed in the day-to-day of that. My job is to make sure, with now a very large employee base, that we all stay gainfully employed. And I trust these guys to do what they do, right? They go in the lab and they make magic happen. But I'm telling you, there's some exciting things. And, we've only had the steering wheel on this thing for 2 years. So wait and see what 23 looks like.
Well, I know for a fact that that's happening because I don't know how many phone calls, emails, the three of us have had going back and forth about that. I've been whining like a baby for a 2-pound big Magnum elk hunting stock, and I know exactly what I want, but I know you guys are addressing that. I don't know how much you want to disclose, but I know Eric's been working on some new fills and things. And so there is technology coming, there's changes coming, and you're hearing what we're asking for.
Yep.
Well, I do want to touch on an aspect of that, because it's very important. We are experimenting with different fills. We're experimenting with how to put them in place and all that kind of stuff. The fills Mcmillan uses are hand blended. And the reason why they're hand blended is because we use materials that you cannot use in an injectable. So there are other brands out there that use a product it is easier to use, it's quicker to use, and you just inject it in like you're squirting it out of a tube of toothpaste, and it goes right in there just fine. You're just with those kinds of systems that you can't use some of the old school stuff. Kick me in the nuts for using old school, but it works. Using old school stuff, old school approaches to make composites that we guarantee for life. And we're experimenting with different combinations of those things, but we know we can't run them through a squirted tube. So we have to hand mix them. We have to hand lay them to make sure that we put that product in place. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any reason to get away from that. If we could find an injectable that would be equal or better, we'd use it, but we haven't done that yet. So, it's not for not trying, believe me, we're working on all this stuff too. We don't have anything better to do every day, but get better. So we're doing it too.
So that's to you and Bob's point, you've talked about, kind of getting rid of the minimal stuff. I mean, is the guy still able to call up with a pet project to, hey, I got an idea. Can we try something? Do you still work with, obviously you work with us a lot, and we've tested things for you and things like that, so we see things a little bit too, but the general public might not know, you've said that we're trying new things and things like that. So is that stuff you're still working with people in the industry to try those new things, to get it out in the field? Tell us about that. Is that still happening like it was when Kelly was a part of the company?
I would say that we are not as open to everything as things might have been in the past. It has to be something that fits within the parameters of what we believe we're really good at, that we could actually deliver to the market. I've heard some people say that, I've heard it said that people are upset because it really seemed like Kelly and the guys at Defiance was the only place you could go to dream up some new thing that nobody else does. And they're the only companies left that can do that. Well, anybody that can use a little bit of logic might wonder, why are they the only two companies that can do that? And then you can even take that a bit further, and I'm sure we'll get into this down the road a bit. but why is it that those two companies have recently been purchased and there's been dramatic shifts in their costing structures? It's just one of those things where if you want to stay healthy and if you want to exist in the industry and in the manufacturing world, you've got to find something that you're good at, and you've got to charge a fair price for it. And now I will share with you something that we've talked about is, can we get it healthy enough so that it literally has its own side entity that is not a distraction or is distracted, that we can actually have, like, you know, in theory, like a Remington custom shop. You know, they got the Remington does, the guys will laugh at them because, yeah, I did 50 rifles today. How many did you do? I did 3. You know, that we can actually create that within the structure of the operation, but we have to do it so that it's not a distraction or it slows everything down. And I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but we will, our minds are open. We do listen to requests that people provide. And if it's something we can go to, we're figuring out how to introduce it into the line, you know. And so, and I know that you guys are a big part of something that's coming up, the Game Warden LR. There was a lot of talk about how important it was to have that angle on that buttstock a certain way so that it could get, yeah, there you go. So it could, so you can have more effective recoil control. Well, that was a project that somebody brought to us and said, man, it'd be great if you did this. Well, here it comes, you know. And so, yeah, we still do that. We just don't necessarily look at something that, hey, I need one of these because I've really thought it'd be cool to have one of these. And can you tie up your production resources for a few months to work on it? And then I'll really appreciate when it's done. I could never bill that person enough for what that takes away from an operation that's trying to make stocks for a lot of people who are upset that they can't get them faster.
Let's don't ignore the obvious. We just said it. This is a 50-year-old company. Okay. And with age, it's just like we are in our lives. I'm no rich man, but I've got money to spend today that I didn't have when I was 25. You know what I'm saying? I've been at this for a while. Now, Mcmillan Stocks was just purchased, and I'm sure it was at a large amount of money. I mean, you know, it's a hell of a company. But now comes the burden of, we've got to pay for that 50-year-old company again here. Somebody's got to, you know, come to the call there every month or every quarter or whatever it is when that note's due, you know. And so I think, you know, it's only common sense to know that as time goes on and as things start to earn themselves a little bit more, there'll be more room for that, you know, those special requests.
Right.
I think,
would,
go ahead, Bob.
sorry, Daniel. I would say, from my aspect, Jeff, you kind of nailed it, because I was going to talk and then you went.
Well, that's a good transition here. You know, there's been a lot of stuff about, you know, Bob, how the hell are you doing it? You know, I mean, are you into debt up to your eyeballs? You in with the mafia? Tell us what got you here. We've talked about Mcmillan. It's doing well. The elephant in the room is Defiance. There's a lot of people out there. How the hell can he buy Mcmillan and 2 years later buy Defiance? You know, like I said, you in with the Kremlin? What do we got going on? Tell us how you got here.
Solely sold.
All right, so it'll be probably a long story long, but I'll try to keep it.
Most people listen to podcasts while they're driving, so make the road trip go away.
Yeah.
So here's how it is. I don't know, you know, how many ever fans I had and who had ever read my bio. You know, I think it's been on our website for years, but I just am one of those guys that, I guess when I was 20 years old, I started my own company. It was a construction company. And I took everything I made in construction and invested in land. And then in 2008, things got really tough. But I learned a lot, right? So I always kind of made a comment.
Got a few lessons on that too back then. Yeah.
I've always kind of made a comment to my kids that, you know, whether it's going to college or just learning it as you go, an education is never going to be free. So every one of those educations that cost me money, what I tried not to do is repeat it, right? I tried not to repeat the mistakes. And so when we got into 2009 and 2010, and we knew that, you know, we were potentially going to put on an outdoor television program, I think my motivation was entirely different, because I think people have a perception of who I am or an assumption of who I am. And I can only tell you that most likely that's not who I am, but they have their own opinions. But what I mean by that is I think that it's perceived that if you have an outdoor television, you enjoy seeing yourself, or you're a braggart or something of that nature, right? But I understood, and I had some really good mentorship, I think, before I went into it. I specifically got told right to my face that if you do not have a product, or you do not have the $1 million idea, your TV show is going to come and go, and you'll have wasted the best years of your life, that you're actually equitable as a business guy or some high level, corporate or CEO type figure. And so when I went into TV, I don't think I'm a good host at all. I'm probably horrible. But what I went there to do was showcase the products, right? So we like to take trophy game at whatever range that is, 50 yards, 500 yards, 1,000 yards. It doesn't matter. What matters is we try to find the biggest animal. We call ourselves 5-day heroes. So I got 5 days to hunt. I got 26 hunts I got to do a year to make a full year of TV shows. So I got to find the most mature animals I can in 5 years. And I found like Eric said, there's a formula to this, right? How I would address the mountains, how I would find game, and how I would get them dead, and I would move on. And so I didn't care about my ego. I didn't care about my FaceTime. I cared about my business model. And so over nearly 13 and a half, going on 14 years of being on the road 22 to 26 weeks a year, what I did, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, is after 08, we had some resources and a wherewithal of what to do going forward in rebuilding in another business. And then that many years on the road, you don't have a lot of time to spend your money, right? You're not home. So it sounds really funny, but Jeff, I know you're a car guy. So this is how I got here. Let me tell you the funny story. So every time I could get to where I had enough cash to invest in a classic car, I invested in a muscle car. I loved 60s and 70s Chevys and Fords, Mustangs, Camaros, Broncos, crew cab Ford pickups, and square body Chevy pickups. That's what I invested my money in. And I happened to have a 4,000 square foot or maybe a little bit bigger shop where all my hunting stuff was right at my house. We didn't have like an elaborate business front. We had this on my 5-acre property. And I got to a point that over the years I was buying car stackers because I was getting so many cars in there. I had to get stackers and put them all vertical in this shop. And then over years, it amounted to a lot of cars. And then COVID came. Well, also I had enough time in my primary home, 20 some years, that my home was essentially paid for. And so COVID came. And I keep saying this COVID because we all know what COVID did. It blew up the world for reselling things. Well, it just so happened that Barrett Jackson was cranking out giant numbers for muscle cars.
Yeah,
And
they have been for sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you deal in cars, right? So,
Yep, every day.
So one day, well, I say one day, but I'll be honest, the Mcmillan conversation with Kelly was 3 years of conversations, and it was coming to a head. We'd been talking about this 3 years. And at the beginning of it, like anything, it was something that I couldn't even fathom that I could afford. And then as I started to wrap my head around it more, he had his moments where he was getting cold feet. Is it time to go? Is it not time to go? I really like this. I like being at the range with the guys. And then he'd come back to me and I'd be, well, maybe I can do it. Maybe. Anyway, 3 years of this back and forth, and I'm sitting there staring at this mountain of cars. And I basically said to my
Most
wife,
people would call that heaven.
well, I wasn't getting to drive them. Every time I would go to drive them, because I was on the road all the time, the batteries were dead. They wouldn't even start. So had a guy come over that does the Barrett Jackson deal, and he started running some numbers, and I started going, we're in a situation here where we can maybe migrate this steel to this business. So that's essentially what we did in short. I remember it was about 3 weeks of literally no sleep, just no sleep. And because I was kind of attached to them, right? Like, man, if I sell these things, they're never coming back.
Yeah, you're never finding them again.
Right, they're gone. But Kelly was getting more serious, and we had a very, very good relationship outside of our business relationship. And he had given me the indicators that now was the time. So we took a leap of faith. The trucks started showing up in the driveway and they started hauling cars off. Checks started coming in. And when it was time to close, December of 2019, I started sending money to Kelly. And we structured the deal and we became the owners of Mcmillan, and he was happy and I was happy. And it's a damn shame what happened 6 months after that.
Oh,
But
for sure.
we bought the company and he was happy and I was ecstatic, and we started to implement the things that we knew were going to pay the bill on something like that. And he did have moments where he scratched his head and went, this is not how we've done it. But then he's seen the numbers for the first 2 quarters and he's like, you're onto something. And then we have been successful in taking care of our obligation to that estate without fail ever since. And so I know when it comes down to the importance of that scenario, the people that are being taken care of because of it, or what would have mattered to him. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the Mcmillan thing.
Right.
We get into Mcmillan, and I told you earlier there was some real estate. I hadn't sold the real estate. I sold the cars to get
Right.
Mcmillan. Well, we were doing the things that we needed to do to get Mcmillan in the way that we wanted it to be. We were starting to see an increase of revenue. Again, COVID, so we had MOA Rifles was doing well. Everything was doing good. Our shooting events were cranking. Even the hunting camps were, hunts went nuts during COVID. Let's face it, like for every hunt you had, there was 10 guys in line for it, right? They're just,
Right.
everybody started living like they were dying.
Yep.
So we ended up using all of those tools, plus my last kid, which is my son, we have 5 of them between Chris and I, had graduated, and he's moving out with his girlfriend. And we're looking at the property, looking at the size of it, and we're doing what every empty nester does, going, we don't need this place. Let's roll. Well, so we rolled, and that created a revenue stream. Way, because as Eric
Oh, crap.
had a talk, this is a superpower when it comes to branding and quality. And they had that same thing going on where they wanted to make every single person happy at their own detriment. So one of the biggest misnomers with Defiance is, I think some out there want to believe it was owned by a guy. It wasn't owned by a guy. It was owned by a venture capital company.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And there you go. See, so that's what the world perceives of Defiance. They perceive it's a guy, and we just took it over, whether it was hostile, it wasn't hostile, whatever they perceive. The fact of the matter is Defiance was getting itself into a situation where it didn't understand ROI on what it was putting on the floor. Like, I'll give you guys a prime example. There is multiple machines in that building that cost 7 figures to bolt to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how much margin is in an action, and how many must you sell to pay for one of those machines? It's an astronomical amount.
Right.
So when you have an entire 2-lot, industrial park complex full of those machines, it becomes an amazing amount of overhead service. So as much as Defiance is the gold standard of quality and premium actions, which it is, believe me, Eric and I have spent an immense amount of time there over the last 6 weeks. You could build a spaceship in that place. And
Sure.
and so that particular group that own that company or own the majority of that company found their way, and I found my way. We kind of met in the middle through, of all ironic things, a very, very close friend of mine, family member. They made a light introduction, and then one of their members had actually walked into Mcmillan and said, there might be an opportunity. Well, the opportunity that was presented is not exactly how it went. More so, it just, as the way the cards fell, I think it became an overwhelming feeling of, you know what, you guys might just be the group to just take this and then get it moving in the direction that it needs to go, because you now have a track record of proven results. And so I squeezed every penny from every Dollar Tree I could possibly find, and we were able to strike a deal. I guess for the people that wonder, I'm the guy, right? Like, there is no investors. I don't have an investor. There are no money men behind me. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that Michael Bisping UFC, his autobiography. And pardon my French, but right in the intro of it, he says, there's no plan B, right? This is the only fucking shot I have. That's where we're at, guys. We're at 14 years traveling my ass off, saving every dollar to put it in one investment. In a matter of timing, COVID was the craziest time in United States history to sell stuff. So we sold it, we liquidated, we bought. And then we sold more and we liquidated and we bought. And we've just done a very, very good job working with a very strong team of individuals, all the way from my management team, right? So Eric is all things general management for the Extreme Group. He is eyes, ears, everything for Mcmillan, Defiance. And it is now my job to run this thing from 30,000 feet, right? I've got to make sure the dollars and cents are everywhere they need to be, 10 steps ahead of this wrecking machine right here, right? That's what we're going to do, because my entire goal, I should say, our mantra going forward, because I'm also an owner of a gun company. So I've been on both sides of this deal, right? From having MOA rifles and understanding the constraints that builders are going through, big and small, across the country. Components are a real problem, right? Demand is good, it's high. Getting components is such a pain in the ass right now that using some of the Mcmillan model as we migrate into Defiance is what we're really hoping to do here. Because if you go back and you listen to what Eric was describing at Mcmillan, we essentially had this custom shop feel that was pulling down so much of the floor time. And so we had this 1-to-10 ratio of guys that are waiting an exorbitant amount of time so that we, can do this one-off project. Now, as much as we want the feedback so that we can become better at what we're doing, and we might be able to come up with this stellar new product, our goal is, if we're going to make a stellar new product, or we're going to even work within the current product line, we want to streamline so that we can actually get product to the market. That is the entire mantra of what we're working with. And going back to the notion of, this isn't an experiment. We've already proven it at Mcmillan, which you guys know, right? Like, you've got customers, we've got customers, we're cutting lead times down, everybody's seeing it. Now that we've got our costing models correct, we've got our manufacturing processes streamlined and correct, we're going to roll into Defiance, which, by the way, has a phenomenal team, right? I mean, these people are amazing. The facility is amazing. The machines are amazing. We're going to tune this thing up so that we're going to find the proper ratio of consumer delivered actions and our, what we call OEM, right? So our builder actions. And we're going to focus solely on weeding out some of the things that are holding that operation back and getting product into the market. Now, some might say, are we going to sacrifice quality? Well, hell no, we're not going to sacrifice quality. I'm not out in the shop telling people what to do. That's not my job. I don't know what to tell them to do. They know their job better than me. What I want to do is make sure I can keep this crew of elite people gainfully employed, happy at their job, and doing what they love, and putting more emphasis on streamlining so that we can actually start to infuse enough product in the market to start settling some of these giant headaches, right? So when we get that feedback of, oh, they're going to raise prices, oh, they're going to cut, quality. No, we're not going to do any of that, but we're damn sure going to find a way to start delivering on our promises, right? Taking orders and delivering products are two different things. And since I've been on the gun builder side of this world, I know the only damn thing that matters is when the box of parts shows up. And that's what we want to get better at doing.
Yep. No, I think
So-
I think that's a good thing. Go ahead.
So I'll be the devil's advocate here because the fear of change is the big thing. This is the big elephant in the room. It's the fear of change. And I'm one of them people. When I got something I really like, I don't want anything to change, But so what as a consumer, when I look at Defiance of tomorrow, what am I going to notice? Is there going to be a big change? Am I going to notice? I mean, obviously the good points that you just brought up are we're going to get product hopefully sooner. We're still going to be talking to the same people on the phone when we call there, just like we do when we call Mcmillan. But so is there anything I should be scared of? What's going to change?
I'll answer and then I'll defer to Eric because this is absolutely in his wheelhouse. I will tell you that right now, the receivers, right? The actions, right? The tenacities, the deviants, the ruckus, the antis, right? We're not going to discontinue any of those right now. We don't know if we ever are going to. What we are working on right now is, do we have the proper ratio of machines and the uptime for those machines, right? Today, actually, we had a conversation of, are we properly gunned in the machine department? And what it actually come down to is one of the most expensive machines in the building. They all have operations that they do, but the demand for the product that's being ordered is actually not one in which that machine excels at. And we might be able to transition that machine to another machine, another wire EDM, and a couple other things that would actually fit more customer demand on the existing product line. That might be something we look at. Another thing we're looking at is, so you guys understand, Defiance run 24 hours a day. Now we have different levels of manpower during those days and how those shifts run. We're diving in hard on, are we manning the right shifts and running the right parts per shift for maximum output? We're not for certain that we're there with that yet either. Now, once we learn who we are and how to get really good at doing that, then we could address apprehensions. I'm not going to be bashful and say, maybe we would discontinue something, but right now, from a sales perspective, that's not actually, when we went through that same conversation today, cutting something from the block was not where it went. We talked about it, but it actually isn't where it went. Where it went was back to Eric and our GM there, Kevin. It went to their expertise in how to streamline these processes to actually get that product out. It didn't come back to, well, if we just chop this off, we could do more of this. So that's a good thing for Defiance. I actually believe we're probably, and Eric, I don't know, what do you think? I think we're going to keep the SKUs.
Yeah, it seems to me that the question isn't at all about what products will change. The question, the factors that are going to be most significant that everybody will see is Defiance actions will be available well into the future. That's really the more critical issue, because there are some fundamental realities when it comes to manufacturing. If you have a very expensive machine that's only minutes faster and is only tens of dollars cheaper in terms of process time, but it costs twice as much, but the products that you make on it you sell for quite a bit lower, I'm here to tell you that math doesn't work. And that math ultimately leads you to a place that's very hard to maneuver out of. So the thing that we're going to do is we're going to ensure the market that Defiance products will be available well into the future by making sure that we cost them within the realities of the actual cost of what's going on. And we price them in consistent with the realities of the cost of what's actually going on, so that when we make that fair exchange of value for money, we can keep those machines running, and we can, employ those people that feed their families and all that kind of stuff. And I don't mean to take it to a place like that. I'm saying that for a very important reason. The people there are tremendous. They're highly skilled. They're the same people that were there before, with the exception of just a couple folks that were involved in the financial decisions of the operation. Those guys want to do a good job. I mean, you can see it in their eyes. They're hungry, and they're passionate about where they work. We're in the entertainment industry. You don't need a rifle to drive down the street. You don't need a rifle to fight off the enemy within the confines of the United States.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. And I'm there with you, brother. I'm there with you. I think everybody should have one more rifle all the time. But the fact is, the people who are buying these premium products are buying it because they love what they do. And it's been my experience that the people that work in this industry, with some exceptions, but it's not the case at Defiance, they love that they're working for Defiance. And these people are very dedicated to what they do. They're very proud of what they do. And we saw that the circumstance was such that if we didn't get involved and apply these changes that everybody's freaking out about, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you the situation was real difficult. And unless you apply some logic and you apply the discipline of, look, I'm sorry guys, but we're going to go through this painfully together. And I've been through it before. When Berger made adjustments, it was just a lot longer ago. And so now those changes seem incremental. Well, that's because we figured out how to do it right well into the past. And nobody really noticed because we weren't that far off, frankly. I've had the benefit of having some incredible mentors myself when it comes to manufacturing costing. And I learned a lot through that process. And there were things that we had to change that some people were alarmed by. But they happened, and everything went forward, and everybody's happy. And now you see incremental natural change. Well, in this case, everything that's happening is to keep Defiance actions going to the market, and to do that in the best possible way we know how. And there's just some formula type systems that you start looking at. I mean, there's cell balance, there's just in time, and I don't mean to turn this into a manufacturing lesson, but there's just stuff you got to do. And if you know how to do it, then it's not simple, but it's simple, but it's not easy. And you just have to go in there and do the next step and take the arrows when they come. But then 10 years from now, I think a lot of people are going to be happy that we did it.
Well, and I think that's the neatest thing about this podcast is kind of peeling back a layer of the onion, so to speak. A lot of people are familiar with Berger and Mcmillan, things like that, and they've just heard what they've heard. And I mean, we've known you, Eric, for so many years, and they don't see the behind the scenes, the transitions you've been a part of, and things like that. And this is something that Dad and I actually talked about the other day, and that you've been a big part of as well, is when we were with Berger, is, when we first got into this, long range was like, heck, I remember Dad blowing up a frozen milk jug at 500 yards and all the guys like, oh my God, he's never going to hit it. That's impossible. And that was, I don't know, 15 years ago. It really wasn't that long ago, but the components were easier to get and things like that. Well, then it became this bigger thing. And that's what a lot of these businesses, that are, like Berger has been, that's gone through this painstaking change of moving the factory from California to Arizona. And I got to tour that factory and things like that, and talking with the guys there, and just like the real in their eyes when they're like, we're literally pumping out 3 times as much product than we ever have. And it's night and day difference of how much better the product was. And the end consumer doesn't notice the change between the very first 215 Berger to the one we got today. But if you went and had an old box of them, you started measuring OALs on them, it's like night and day difference. And so it's kind of cool to see, and like I said, to get you guys out in front of people, because you're doing those same things and you've been through those same things. And my point, I kind of got off on a tangent here there, that the industry has grown so much, there's more product out there now than there ever has been. But people that are shooting matches, that are wearing out these Defiance actions, that are buying the Mcmillan stocks, that are the bullets and things like that, the consumer level has, I don't know, gone up probably tenfold. Again, we used to have a hunting rifle, 200 rounds. That was, I don't know, 10 years worth of shooting. Now we go burn it in 2 days at a match, and sling half of it.
Let me move over a little bit.
Yeah, it's our latest burger shipment. We had to
keep 200 or 300 bullets. Now we keep 2 or 3.
Yeah, if you don't have
bullets.
500 boxes, it don't matter,
Well, go ahead.
And so that's I think it's kind of cool for you to talk about that and to bring that up, the fact that you've gone through all these manufacturing changes. And I think if it got down to the brass tacks of all the negative comments that have been online and things like that, and Bob touched on it a little bit, it didn't really happen with Mcmillan takeover, because I think that was kind of the natural process of what that was happening, but it was a real shocker with the Defiance thing. And now, he's the big bad guy coming in to change everything, when I think the reality of it's from, again, this is the first time I've ever talked to you, Bob, in person. And I can see that it's down to, you just have a passion for the sport. And this is like you said, it's do or die. And you wanted to make sure that those products are there for the future shooters.
For me, guys,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jeff. I think for me, it's right. It's the enthusiast part of it. And I think, like you touched on, am I perceived as the big bad guy that I'm going to come in and do these negative things? And I'm frankly not sure where it comes from. And so here's how I'll regard that is, here's a funny story. For example, when we bought Mcmillan, Eric had been in the process internally, working with Kelly, working with me. He was very intricate to the acquisition and transition of that company. And when we finally took it over, there were some folks in that building, I think, since they don't know what to think, they just assumed like, well, I just need to go find another job. And
fear of the unknown.
Right. And so so I'm going to try to tie this all together, but here's the funny part about this. So a couple of them gave their notice, right? And then Eric's like, well, you don't have to leave. And then some of them still walked out, like, because they still didn't know what to do. And then what was it, a week later or something, they come back and they're like, well, maybe I can have my job back. And Eric's like, well, yeah, you never had to leave anyway, right? Like, nobody said you had to leave. Well,
yeah.
So at Mcmillan, we've only made that situation better. And the reason I'm bringing up this employment thing is because I think when these naysayers, I will hope from this podcast going forward that people that decide to interject online in forums think beyond me, right? It ain't about me, right? I'm a cog on the wheel at this point. I'm one tooth on a gear. And the reason I say that is multifaceted. To your point, Daniel, the market has grown so big, I can't be everything to everyone, because now I have a vast employee base to be something to all of them, okay? So I need to do my job the best I can do. And then the other facet to that situation is, when somebody thinks negatively, think about, I'm not going to buy a Defiance action because Bob bought that. Well, how much is that going to hurt me versus the 50 employees, mind you, which I will say, none of them left, not one. Every single person that was in that building is still there, with the exception of the financial team that Eric described. So that not only feeds to the fact of, hey guys, give us a chance, let us prove you wrong, in a good way, right? Let us prove to you nothing's changing. You want to know why? Because it's the same guys running the same thing. And Eric has a funny little thing with the uncertain moments. Oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know what he says? We're going to do the same thing we did yesterday. Right? So nothing's going to change with the product. We value our employees. Give us a chance, right? Like, It's not about me. It's not about any hostile takeovers. It's not about any of that. What it's about is about me having a vision to go and try to service that big market like you're talking about, Daniel. The market has grown. I desire to fill the need of the market, and I'm going to do it through an amazing group of teams. That's how we're going to do this.
So what I take from all that is it's the same people, the same company. We're going to talk to the same people on the phone, just like Mcmillan. You guys are basically, I mean, not to discredit what you do, because you've already displayed just how intense it is, but you're the behind the scenes guys. You know,
Exactly.
the people that know how to build the actions, the people that know how to build the stocks, that do that every day and take pride in their work, they're still there. When we dial up the phone, we can still talk to that favorite guy we had there. We can still order the action just like we wanted to. And you know, so I guess it's just a matter of all you're going to do is make our life better by doing the behind the scenes work and streamlining things and make it so we get the product sooner and there's more of it. Because this is no kidding, guys. The demand for firearm stuff today, whether it be a bullet or whether it be an action or whether it be a stock or whether it be an optic, the demand it's incredible to what it was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, it's off the chart.
I don't remember what thread, or maybe it was our social media. I don't remember, but I took the time. I took a lot of time actually, because it's important to me, right? It's me personally, right? I'm just the guy, same as everybody else here. But I replied to a guy, and maybe it would be relevant to this right now. Like we keep touching on, the demand has never been higher, but the workforce is the most difficult to acquire.
Anybody
So
in hiring knows that.
to a guy on social media. I said, you know, I think guys need to be open-minded to the notion that more of these consolidations are coming, because with independence comes employment struggles, right? And manufacturing struggles, financial struggles, all the things that come with this. As we grow as a company with these brands, it's giving us more resources to get, you know, an avenue to fill that, or a better attempt at filling that demand, right? So it's not perceived as corporate takeovers. We're trying to use the resources at hand just a bit more efficient than the next guy. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize, and I've never been in it, but just talked with some friends and things like that, that in the machining world, like how much, you know, and Eric, you talked about this earlier, you know, the seconds that the machine spends to do this. I mean, it comes down to efficient programming to where, you know, I know some guys in CNC that they won't even put videos on social media of how their tools are running, because that's their secret sauce. That's how they're able to make their parts for what they're able to make them. And if somebody sees, oh, that's how he's doing it that millisecond quicker, that runtime of that machine, especially when you're talking about machines that run 24-hour and have product feeders going into them and stuff like that. It's you know, it's cool that you guys are a part to recognize that and know that, hey, if we brought in this machine, it would free up that machine to do this. And, you know, you're going to make the same products, but you're going to make them more efficiently. And I mean, at the end of the day, the efficiency is what builds into the cost. So things get more expensive over time. That's what they're doing now, but you're going to minimize that with your expertise and management and stuff like that.
Well, we've seen a lot of companies over the last several years that have kind of joined forces or went into a group, and basically you guys are building on the same structure there. But what that is that strength. That strength. And that makes me feel, and what I hear now is the value you're putting in those people that have been doing that job and are still going to remain doing that job. And you're just giving them some security from the strength of your corporation, you know, your group of companies, you know. I mean, they can lean on each other a little bit when they need to, and that. So I think it makes me feel better. You know, I mean, everybody has these fears when they got a product they love, you know. So I guess I got to ask this: what are you buying next, Bob?
Are you taking requests?
Nothing.
Eric, how much
Earmuffs,
time-
la, la, la.
and how much more time every week do you have, Eric?
Oh, my gosh.
Funny.
For the sake of my buddy Eric's heart, I will politely decline to answer, but I will tell you, there's more to come. There is more to come.
You know,
Well,
it's kind of cool to see, like I said, the first time meeting you, Bob, and I work for a company and they have a philosophy, and they're family-owned company, but they've grown to, you know, this corporation, and the philosophy is, and unfortunately it's come up more now than it has in the past, but you mentioned the 2008 debacle. Again, this is a car business, but their philosophy is you cannot save your way to a profit. And that seems to be the same mindset you have, you know, when it is the big corporations and, you know, everybody's just a number and stuff like that. It's pinching the pennies. It's cutting people. It's doing that kind of thing. And you guys have clearly shown you don't have that persona. It's, we can't save our way to a profit. So we're going to come in here. We're going to spend a bunch of money. We're going to come out stronger. We're going to make a great product at a great price, and we're going to grow. I mean, that seems what I see from talking with you guys.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, by joining forces with internally, I guess I should say, you know, we've been able, when I go back to our employees, everybody knows how hard it is to find labor right now. We have implemented significant pay increases through the Mcmillan. We have profit sharing now. We have done everything that we can do to not just get the employees that we've had or that Kelly had or the Defiance Group had to stay, but we want to attract the type of people that are the same mindset. And since we're fortunate with demand, right? So for example, as we streamline Defiance, right? Give us a couple months here, okay? As we streamline those processes, I have been stern. Like, I don't put my foot down. We vote by committee, and everybody's got to vote on that management team. But the one thing that I've kept everybody in the same lane with is that all extra capacity is going to go to consumers. Okay, so that's you when you call in for a single action. We're not taking on new builders. We love builders. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there is so many consumers that have been pushed to the wayside for so long, right? There's so many orders in that queue that every time we can build one more action, that's going to be an individual that gets a call on his lunch break saying, dude, we finally got your action ready. Okay. And as we speak, right now, this very moment, if you put this on tonight, you can call Defiance on Tuesday and you can order an action. So if you guys aren't privy to all of this in August, they shut it all off, guys. They said no more orders, none. I'm telling you right now, you can call next week and order an action because we are committed to making these processes better, putting more product on the ground, and our employee base is going to grow. It's not shrinking, right? We're using the revenue from the demand that we have to be a better employer, employ more qualified people at rates that they can make a comfortable living. And we're going to put that product out in the market so that those consumers can enjoy it and they can get past waiting for those lead times. So mark my words, next week you can order an action and it will actually come sometime because every single bit of capacity is going to consumers.
Awesome.
All right. Well, what did we miss, guys? What was there anything there we haven't covered?
I'd like to say something, and I think it's important that people hear this from somebody other than Bob. I started working with Bob quite a long time ago. He was a host of a television show. Berger wanted to promote some hunting bullets, and I was impressed right away with Bob and his wife Chris. Very smart guy, very high energy guy, very passionate guy, and so we had a working relationship that developed very quickly into a friendship. I've enjoyed a lot of social time and a lot of good dinners and a lot of good conversations with Bob and Chris over the years. And, you know, I was an owner of a company. I did really well. left the company just because, you know, those kinds of things happens when you're with a place for a long time and people are going in different directions. And I didn't think it was going to go where I thought it was. Turned out it did, which is great. I'm thrilled for them. They're going to hear some great stuff from Burger coming. But my point is, I could have done a variety of different things, and I wasn't really sure what to do, but I knew I wanted it to matter to me, because that's, you know, getting up and doing something because you have to for a check, or just doing something because you have to because you don't know why. Just it didn't sit well with me. And when the opportunity came up to go to work for Kelly, and he made me his GM, and talking with Bob about what they were doing, I had been exposed to some ideas in Burger / Capstone that were really interesting in conversations that I had with Bob. And what I saw was someone who I can trust to commit something that's very hard, who's risking a tremendous amount of money, that I guarantee you I will never be an owner of a business again. My heart can't take it. It's a very high stress, high risk circumstance, and everything you have is on the line. And the experience that I've had with Bob and his commitment to being open to everybody's ideas in the room, I want to hear them all. I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and the passion that he has for the market and for what he does, I'm proud to work for him. I'm proud to be associated with all this. And, you know, I'm thrilled when we're together and we're brainstorming about stuff, because he just wants to go. He just wants to make stuff better. He just wants to make stuff happen. And I was fortunate enough to be able to jump on the train, and I'm just going to ride it with him and a bunch of other very highly qualified people. And you're going to see that continue to grow. And so I want those people that consider that maybe he's the bad guy. Sometimes I wonder if maybe they're more competitors than actual customers, because you never know where those things are coming from. But I will tell you this, having worked with the man on a regular basis, I'm glad I do. And I'm fortunate to be involved in this situation, and I'm looking forward to the future. And I'm expecting, you know, I'll go back to a situation we brought up earlier about demand and people, you know, complaining about all that kind of stuff. When there was a point, Burgers had 5 different owners. There was a point in some of the transitions where it had gone up and then dipped back down, where I'd been let go and then brought back. Well, I got back involved, and the company was doing about $500,000 a year annually. Within 10 years, we got to $15 million a year annually. So if you can do any math with a simple calculator, you got to understand the amount of bullets that were being made at $500,000 a year versus 15 million a year. The number one complaint the entire time is, I can't get my product. I can't get my product. We made that many more bullets, and they were still complaining about how they can't get their product. So I'm expecting that people are going to be unhappy while they're getting more actions than they did before, while they're getting more stocks than they did before, of the highest quality that can be made. You know, and people are going to be satisfied, and there's some really interesting stuff going on in the future. And I think those are all going to be good things. And I think those people that might think that Bob is the demon in all this might take a step back in 10 years and go, you know what, this guy was onto something, and he knows how to put strong people in places and let them do their jobs. And he knows how to lead them and guide them. And I'm just really excited about it. And to me, it's a very wonderful thing to be a part of something that can be this strong and that successful, because it doesn't happen all the time. And so I think it's important for somebody to hear from somebody other than Bob, because he's sort of humble in the sense that he's not going to tell you all the things that he's done typically, which is why so many people can shoot arrows at him. But I've seen it firsthand, and he's an impressive guy, and I'm glad to work for him.
You're gonna make me tear up.
Yeah, that'll be $10, Bob.
Hey.
shoot.
No, it's all true. All true.
All right. Well, like I said, I think we put a lot of aired out a lot of dirty laundry there, and a lot of the unknowns that again, I think a lot of all the comments come back to fear. You know, it's worried about where's this going, where's that going. It's not that they've ever had a bad experience with anybody involved. You know, it's just change. And it's cool, like I said, to hear from both the man and a guy that's been with him from the beginning, from with his acquisitions and stuff like that, to see where it's going, and hear what the plans are. Because I don't think a lot of people will, sit in front of a camera Christmas Eve at 9:15 at night and and do this because frankly, I don't give a shit. You do. So that's why we're here.
Well, thanks for being on, you guys. We appreciate it. We want to get this out to our listeners and our members of our forum and at Long Range Only. And we're, I just felt like this is a podcast that needed to happen. And there's nothing better than hearing it straight from the guys that are doing it. If you don't want to believe it, don't believe it. But by God, you were just giving a good explanation of what's going on. I think we covered it all. So thank you for coming on board with us and doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, guys, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll
well.
get this out there as soon as we can.
All right.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.